Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really big one, a landmark case that every law student absolutely needs to know. It's A. Sasta v. Papayya Sastry versus the government of Andhra Pradesh, and it gets right to the heart of what judicial integrity is all about. So let's just jump right into the big question here. Imagine a court makes a final decision. Case closed, right? But what if? What if that entire judgment was built on a lie? Can you just unravel it? Can a final judgment ever really be undone? That's what this case is all about. All right, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the judgment that was won, look at the bombshell allegation of fraud, walk through the arguments, decode the legal stuff, and then see how the Supreme Court put it all together. Simple as that. Okay, so let's set the scene. Before all the high-stakes legal drama, this whole thing kicked off with something pretty routine, a dispute over land acquisition. So, you've got the government of Andhra Pradesh wanting to acquire some land. The landowners, well, they weren't having it. They challenged the whole thing in the High Court, and guess what? They actually won. The High Court totally sided with them and shut down the acquisition. Looked like a done deal. Case closed. But hold on, because this is where the story gets really interesting. The government didn't just roll over and accept the loss. Oh no. They came back, and they came back with a total bombshell. So the state didn't file a normal appeal. No, they filed a recall petition. They wanted the court to literally take back its own judgment. And the reason? They claimed it was all based on fraud. The accusation was huge, that the landowners had hidden crucial facts from the court just to get that win. And right there, that's the absolute core of this legal fight. Think about it. Can a court that has already said, this is our final decision, just hit a giant undo button? Especially when the reason is an allegation of fraud? This is the massive question at the heart of A.V. Papayya Sastry. All right, let's head into the courtroom. It's time to break down the arguments from both sides. This is where the real legal showdown happens. So you've got two big ideas clashing here. On one side, the government is saying, look, fraud poisons everything. A judgment won by lying isn't a real judgment at all. But on the other side, the landowners are arguing for finality, saying, hey, a case has to end somewhere. If you keep reopening final judgments, the whole system will just be chaos. So the government came in swinging with some heavy arguments. First, they said the judgment was void ab initio, basically invalid from the get-go. Then they brought up Section 151 of the Civil Procedure Code, arguing that the court has this inherent power to stop people from abusing the system. And their knockout punch? They argued that when it comes to fraud, time limits just don't apply. Fraud vitiates everything. Okay, so how did the landowners respond? Well, they put up a pretty strong procedural shield. Their main point was the High Court's decision was final, period. They argued that once an appeal was filed with the Supreme Court, the High Court became, and this is a key term, Functus Officio. It literally means its function is over. So in their eyes, the High Court had zero power to go back and mess with its own order. Okay, so to really get what the Supreme Court decided, we need to unpack those two big legal ideas that were at the center of this whole fight, inherent powers and functus officio. So first up, what are these inherent powers from Section 151? The easiest way to think about it is like a court's emergency override switch. It's this fundamental power they have to make sure justice is served and to stop anyone from gaming the system, especially when the regular rulebook doesn't have an answer. And on the flip side, you have Functus Officio. It's Latin for having performed his office. It's the rule that says once a judge makes a final call on a case, that's it. Their job on that specific matter is done. They can't just go back and change their mind. It's all about making sure judgments are final. Now, what's really important to remember is that the court wasn't just making this up as it went along. They looked back at previous cases. You had cases like MC Jane, which already said that fraud messes up any judicial act. Then there was Shobarani, which made it clear that hiding important facts is fraud on the court. So the court was building on a really solid legal foundation here. Okay, so we've heard the arguments, we've looked at the precedents, the stage is set. So how did the Supreme Court cut through all of this? Well, their reasoning was incredibly clear and logical, breaking it down into 4 simple steps. This is just brilliant. The court laid it out perfectly. Step 1, a judgment based on fraud is a nullity. It's legally nothing. Step 2, since it's nothing, the court can use its inherent power under Section 151 to set it aside. Step 3, and this is the kicker, the whole idea of functus officio
It doesn't apply to something that's a nullity in the first place. You can't be done with your job if the job was invalid from the start. So step 4, the High Court was absolutely right to recall its own order.
And that powerful chain of logic brings us to the ultimate takeaway from this case, its lasting legacy. The court summed it all up in this killer line. A judgment, decree, or order obtained by playing fraud on the court is a nullity and non-est in the eye of law. Non-est, it just means it is not. In the eyes of the law, an order won by fraud simply does not exist. It's like it never even happened. And that, right there, is the core principle from this case. It's a huge deal. It tells us that while finality is important, it's not a shield for fraud. You can challenge a fraudulent order at any time in any court, because legally it was void from the moment it was made. Fraud unravels everything. So this case gives a really clear answer when fraud is involved. But it also leaves us with that bigger, timeless question that the entire legal system has to deal with, right? Where do you draw the line between making sure a case is finally over and making sure the outcome was actually fair? It's a tough balance to strike.